Alright, everybody. Welcome back to Corpus Cinema Control for the first time in a long time. This is the channel where I talk about experimental film, video oddities, silent film, so on and so forth. But today we're delving into the realm of video art and old celluloid art. From more of a fine arts world. And hopefully I can do as little editing as possible on this video. Anyway, we're talking about the short films of Richard Serra, at least the ones I could find online. So this includes, excuse me as I look at my list, Hands Tied, Hand Catching Lead, Frame, Hands Scraping, Hand Lead Fulcrum, Television Delivers People, Surprise Attack, Boomerang, and Railroad Turnbridge. Now, there was one other one I could find online called Prisoner's Dilemma from 1974. But we're not going to go into that one because it's a little longer and I feel that that could deserve its own video. But the range of dates that these films are from 1968 all the way up till 1976. And I listed those in chronological order. Anyway, the first thing right off the bat that's noticeable is that Richard Serra brings a sculptor's view into the experimental film world, which is wonderful. It's he has a strong sense of form, material, space, tactility, these sorts of things, and this is apparent. For the entire span of films, from the earliest ones to the most recent one, but it just expands over that time period of him making films. So it goes from simple and expands outward in complexity. So, for example, with the early ones, it's all about the human body and hands sort of interacting with objects and raw material, feeling the heaviness of them, trying to catch them, things like this. We feel that weight. The images are very simple, yet the lighting provides us with a sculptural three-dimensional sense to them, despite the sort of flatness of the simplicity. Like it's just a hand and lead dropping down with like a white background behind them. And, it sounds flat, but there's still a weight in the shadows that are produced to create this chiaroscuro or whatever, this three-dimensionality to it that is very tangible, and we see the material on the hand, the grease or whatever it is, the dust on their hands gives it such a tactile feeling. I'll go more into the later ones in a few, but these early ones do really seem to be about the human body or human limitations, and also pushing against these limitations, pushing against material and the outer world, trying to create something almost futilely, or almost in a futile sense, if that's the better way to say that. Like the endless dropping of lead into the hand, or the endless like holding of lead in the hand dropping down, or even having one's hands tied trying to get out of these binds. And as we see in one of the very early ones, Hands Tied from 1968, it's this material. I mean, the film is very simple. It's just this extended shot of these two hands that are tied, trying to untie themselves over the course of the film, over the course of a couple minutes, and then they eventually do get themselves free. So even though there's this futility and fight going on, there's definitely a triumphant energy to these films. This feeling that one can overcome the world around them in order to assert themselves, assert their soul or whatever, make something, And with making something, so for example, one of the other early ones, Hand Catching Lead, is just a hand going like this on screen and the lead dropping down. Pieces of lead dropping down into the hand as it's trying to catch it. The short little description of this film stated that it is it's sort of a depiction of how it felt to create this other sculpture made out of lead that is not depicted, that I haven't seen. But so it is an internal depiction of a sort of creation of sculpture, even though it doesn't look like that at all. Which goes into the idea, reaffirms the idea of sort of, even though it's a futile thing and we never see an end to the grabbing of the lead, and a lot of it's dropped, but some of it's grabbed. Even though there's a futility to this, in the background, behind the scenes, there's sort of a triumphantness in overcoming the lead or the material, the raw world, and building something wonderful out of it, which of course I can relate to as a filmmaker, and hopefully we can all relate to overcoming things. Anyway, just sort of harnessing this swirling world around us and building something for each other out of it that is meaningful and shows some truth of the world in a simplistic way, or not in a simple way, not simplistic, but in a simple way that's easy to digest, which these films are. They're brief, they're simple, they're, in a good way, they're almost sort of zen in quality, in their repetition. In this repetition, it's obvious that Richard Serra has this, he's coming to film from a sculptor's perspective of trying to understand the material of it, the space of it. Sorry, my stutter. The repetitive nature of the scenarios of the films definitely mimics the repetitive nature of the way that film is created and shown. The 24 frames a second, the flashing of the light, the gears turning, so on and so forth. Richard Serra comes to these films. I love that the sculptor's perspective on things, because I don't know. It's a way this it's half surprising, half not, that this sort of person who deals with the three-dimensionality of things can come to film with so much more understanding and of the medium, and so much more curiosity of the medium than, say, an illustrator, turned animator, who they all just deal with the flatness of things and just sort of aesthetic garbage. No offense. And some quick little verses things that I saw within the film is like force versus rest. There's a wonderful push and pull in these films. Force versus rest, motion versus stillness, and entropy versus sort of solidity. I don't know what word is best to use here, but sort of entropy versus solidity. And that one really shows up in, all of them, the sort of chaos of things, the chaos of the dropping metal and trying to grasp at it, trying to hold it still, the sort of entropy of the falling versus the stillness of the grabbing and trying to control, as well as in Hands Scraping from 1968, where there's a pile of metal shavings on the ground, and all these hands are trying to scrape it up, and using only their hands, trying to scrape it up and remove it from the ground and clean it up. Now that is a depiction of sort of chaotic entropy, like tiny little metal filings, and just hundreds of thousands of them. Hundreds or thousands of them. I can't tell how many there are, but there's a lot. And trying to grasp that and make a sort of clean slate, trying to push that stuff away and form something simple and or your own space. Form your own space. Form something simple. This sort of idea. Pushing against that entropy. Not that the entropy is bad. You need that for the simplicity, and you need the simplicity for the entropy. There's this wonderful push and pull. Now, moving forward into some of the later films, Television Delivers People, Surprise Attack, and Boomerang, and we'll leave Railroad Turnbridge for last, because, anyway. These sort of later films they expand on dealing with material to really hone in on the material of mass media and video and television and sound, which is great and very interesting. Starting off with Television Delivers People, it's really stripping down the television broadcast and that sort of materiality to its bare bones. It's dropping all suspension of disbelief and sort of this invisible thing that makes you makes your brain turn off in a way. It's dropping all that in favor of just the screen and message, showing you that the television broadcast, the television screen, is just a message delivered to you. Hence, television delivers people to the broadcasters, or to the advertisers, or whatever. It's a message. It's a mess. The screen is just a message, just words scrolling. I said this already, but it's the simplest version of what the television broadcast is. And of course, what we now have, our whole multimedia world, it's the simplest version of that. It's just words. It's the idea, the message, made with the material. Well, of course it's made with the material, but it's exposing the material in the process. And just like the last one's, is very simple. It is almost sort of zen in its presentation. It understands the repetition of the medium. And it features the scrolling aspect that we have now, which now gets my brain thinking about scrolling. Really, before was left for credits, and now I feel like the scroll we have now might relate to credits, showing us that we're at sort of an end of something these days. I don't know. An end of sort of maybe the scroll now represents the sort of credits of one type of moving image medium. That could be an interesting thought to go into. And credits, that is just info. Credits, info, the end. Credits show the screen as just a message delivery system, which we need to keep in mind about all the multimedia around us now. They're message delivery systems. They're not extensions of life. They are just complicated and ever growing in their complication message delivery systems. So with those earlier films, I stated that it's sort of the body versus against material, world, entropy, etc., and pushing against that. With these later ones, it's definitely the body and the soul versus each other. The material of film, video, and mass media. Television delivers people. The one I just talked about is self-explanatory. But then we have surprise attack, which is just these two hands tossing a brick of lead, or I guess, is it an ingot? I don't know. A brick of lead back and forth as it talks about, as some voice recites some text about home intruder, who's going to shoot first. The other person thinks the other person's going to shoot first, so they're both going to try and shoot first. Anyway, they're both like trying to, it's person versus person trying to get inside of each other's head, trying to get the first attack in, while these two hands are sort of throwing the heavy invisible violence made material, not violence, but invisible brooding pre-attack thing made physical, which is very nice. Like, these two hands are stand-ins for the two people. It's very simple and nice. But yeah, that goes, now we're talking about some sort of violence and pushing against each other, which is, scary. But we're heading in more into the modern world. And, it's also important that it's a home invasion, and encroaching on the space. And mass media encroaches on our space every day. inside of our home, inside of our mind. And then we have Boomerang, in which this person, Nancy Holt, has she's being broadcast or something live while hearing a playback of her voice nearly immediately after she says it, going from microphone into headphones up to her ears, and we hear it as well. And now that I think about it, it's just a sort of update of the previous films. It's like this person fighting against a material or the outside world in order to assert themselves. Like, she's trying to talk, and she's trying to assert herself and talk about even the material. She's trying to talk about the material of film videos. She's trying to talk about sound around her, space, all these sorts of things. But the material itself is preventing her, is making it difficult for her. And she's trying to overcome that in her mind by trying to learn how to talk coherently while hearing herself back. I don't know if that all makes sense, but audio, which is a big part of film video, is playing back at her. It's making it difficult for her to talk. She's trying to talk over it, but she needs to talk with it. These sorts of things. And it's also important that it's her own voice. It's a reflection of her. She's fighting herself in a way that we have to fight ourselves, fight our minds when we watch television, when we watch movies, when we're on our phone, etc., etc. Like how I'm looking at myself right now while recording myself. Every time you look at your phone, you are looking in the mirror. Now, longest for last, I believe. Oh yeah. Longest for last, Railroad Turnbridge. Also, man, watching some of these, especially this one, was funny because the quality of all these is not too good, and a lot of them were basically what we would now call cam rips, even though they were shot on, VHS camera. Shooting the screen is still a camera ripping the screen, but anyway, man, that was just funny. It was like watching a pirated copy of this stuff, which I guess it is, but anyway. Railroad Turnbridge. Now this is the most zen of all, and really an exploration and trying to understand and depict all of this stuff, material, pushing against nature and material and each other. It's all shot out into a huge open space of the outdoors and just earth and real life, and it's really the end point, of the battle of creation. It's a massive hulking structure that turns and spins and all this whatnot, and just to form a vein of railroad track over water that allows trains to pass, money to flow and whatever, material to go here and back, and bodies to and fro, etc., etc. Meanwhile, letting the water flow, letting boats go by, turning to let boats go by. It's crazy. In the film, it captures the grandness of it, but it also captures the minuteness of it. The closeness of the gears turning, the material, the wood and the metal, the shaking of the metal, all these small things that we, from the previous films understand that hands had to do something with this, create it. Anyway, all this small stuff, and then big, we really feel the weight of the movement as the camera is locked down. It's not panning, but the bridge is panning, and the whole world is shifting behind the bridge. And then, of course, we see the bridge shifting on its own. And we get the panning of the camera around the perimeter of the frame of the structure. It's gorgeous. It's very sort of, I use this word already, but zen and meditative, and it's just like a meditation on the space of all these sort of invisible things coming together. And I do think it's very important to save this one for last if you're going to embark on these films, because it's really the culmination of all these things put together. And it is sort of scary as well as peaceful, in the same way, like standing under a bridge, with cars moving over you at high speeds. It's scary that we've come to that point. Like, I don't know how to describe it, but it's just very powerful feeling. It's scary that we've come to the point where all these masses of metal can move over top of you, but you can sit in the still place of concrete and metal and sort of be peaceful. And I don't know. My words aren't wording right now, but you get the idea. It's another push and pull sort of thing going on. Yeah, and it's just a wonderful cap to it all, because it allows this small little film universe to expand out into the entire world, like the open world, open air, trees, nature, etc. Oh, and I totally forgot to talk about Frame, one of the early films that just, again, this is the actual structural film in this lot of films, because it's kind of comedic and has to do with the materiality of cinema, where Richard Serra measures the actual frame of the screen. He measures the frame of a window. He compares the measurements. He measures the projected frame of the window. So there's 3 different sets of measurements. Anyway, it just shows the constructed reality of things. It deconstructs the suspension of disbelief. It deconstructs that. It deconstructs the world by building and measuring. It's pretty remarkable. Not like, anyway, it's pretty remarkable and fun and funny. It's just a nice, fun little watch that gets your mind going about created realities and visual jokes and the frame of the screen that only a sort of three-dimensional sculptor's view could bring to the cinema. Anyway, I really enjoyed these films. They're nice, simple, zen-like, and they have this wonderful push-pull. They really understand the tactility and space and materiality of cinema. Anyway, I highly recommend these to anybody interested in experimental film and art film and whatnot. I feel like that they could definitely be canonized. I'm kind of anti-canon, but anyway, they can be canonized as essential viewing for people interested in these sorts of things. Anyway, and they're just nice to look at and simple little watches. Wonderful. Just warm and have a nice triumphant feeling behind them, which, you can go back and forth on in your own head as to whether you like that or not, but it definitely conjures up these feelings for sure. And I enjoy that, at least. Anyway, so Richard Serra Films, famed sculptor. Who knew he made shorts? Not me. Anyway, this has been Corpus Cinema Control. I am Connor Parsley. If you want to watch my experimental films that I make, just look up my name, ConnorParsley.com, Connor Parsley on YouTube, etc., etc. Okay, signing off for now. Until the next, hopefully soon, video journey into the wide, wide world of moving images.